decide whether each relation defines y as a function of x, and then give the domain and the range. Here we have x times y equals 12. All right, so let's take a look at this here. So first thing is, let's solve for y. Okay, so if we wanted to solve for y for this equation, we would have to divide both sides by x. And therefore, y would then equal 12 divided by x. So let's make a table. Okay, so if we made a table of values, we have our x values and we have y. Remember that the x values represent the domain of the function, and the y values represent the range of the function. Okay, so let's pick a small value. Let's say if we wanted to pick, let's say, -4. Now, it doesn't matter which number you pick as far as negative value is concerned. We can pick -12. Let's go ahead and pick -12 for x. Now, if we plug in x to be -12, well, 12 divided by -12 is going to give us -1. Okay, let's pick -4. Okay, if we pick -4, we have 12 divided by -4. 12 divided by -4 is going to give us -3. Okay, if we pick, let's say, -1, we get 12 divided by -1, which is going to equal -12. Okay, let's pick 0. If we pick 0, 12 divided by 0. Well, we cannot divide a number by 0, so therefore this is undefined. Okay, let's try +1. 12 divided by 1 is equal to 12. Same thing here, if we had 12 divided by +4. Excuse me, not 12, let's say if we picked 4 as our value of x, 12 divided by 4 is going to equal +3, and if we said 12 divided by 12, that's going to equal, if we pick 12 to be x, and then 12 divided by 12 is equal to 1. So what it looks like here is that we can pick any values that are negative, and we can pick any values that are positive. But in this case for x, the numbers that we cannot pick is the value of 0 because it makes it undefined. Okay, so far, do we know it's a function or not? Well, so far we haven't been able to determine that. Now, let's say if we decided to take x times y, again, is equal to 12, and let's say we're going to solve for x this time. So we're going to divide both sides by y. And so therefore, we get x, which is equal to 12 over y. Okay, and so then again, what we're going to do is we're going to create a table. We know that we have x and then y. Here's our domain. Here's our range. So now if we pick y to be -12, just like we did for x, we're going to get the same thing. We're going to get 12 divided by -12, which is equal to -1. Again, if we picked y to be -4, we get 12 divided by -4, which is equal to -3. If we picked y to be -1, 12 divided by -1, which is equal to -12. If we picked y to be 0, that means if 12 divided by 0, this is going to make this undefined again. Okay, now if we picked 12, we know that 12 divided by 12 is going to equal 1. If we picked 4, 12 divided by 4 is going to equal 3. And if we picked 1, well, 12 divided by 1 equals 12. Okay, so again, what do we notice here? Well, we can pick any numbers that are negative, any numbers that are positive. And with our values of x, we're getting negative values and we're getting positive values. But again, just like the values that we picked for x, notice that we cannot let y be 0. okay, which means that we cannot pick 0 to give us this result. Now, we need to answer the question of whether this is a function or not. Okay, now remember, we define it as a function if there's exactly one x value that corresponds to exactly one y value. So we have negative 12 that goes to negative 1. We have negative 4 that goes to negative 3. We have negative 1 that goes to negative 12. We know that 0 is going to give us an undefined answer. It's still mapping that. Okay, we don't have a repeating x value. Okay, same thing on this side. We do not have a repeating x value. So therefore, this is going to represent a function. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's come in here. We're going to say, yes, this is a function. Okay, now we need to determine what is the domain of the function. Okay, now the domain of the function, okay, if you notice, the domain can be any negative number, but it cannot be 0, and it can be any positive number. Okay, so when we want to find the domain of this function, think of the graph. Okay, if you have the graph, okay, we know that we can go from negative infinity to positive infinity. Okay, so when we want to write the domain, we're going to have to go to 0, but we can't include 0. That means we have to stop at 0, and then we have to start again at 0 and go in that direction. So therefore, we're going to say that the domain is the following. It's going to go from negative infinity, comma, 0, parenthesis, union, parenthesis, 0, comma, positive infinity. So let's go ahead and put that in for our result. So here, we're going to have parenthesis, negative infinity, comma, positive infinity, 0, with a union, and then parenthesis, 0, comma, positive infinity. Now let's check our result. So there's our answer. Now we're going to take a look at the range. Okay, now the range, okay, is going to be very similar. Okay, so the range tells us what? Okay, well, you can see here that we can't let y be 0, because if we plugged in 0, it's going to make this x undefined. So we're going to get the same similar situation here. Again, we're going from negative infinity to positive infinity, and we cannot include the 0. So again, when we graph this, okay, this is what our graph is going to look like. So very similar to the previous one. So the range is going to go from negative infinity to 0, union 0 to positive infinity. So let's go ahead and check that out. So we have parenthesis, negative infinity, comma, 0, and then union, parenthesis, 0, comma, positive infinity, and then the parenthesis, and let's check our answer. Okay, now another thing is that we want to make sure we can see what this looks like when we graph it. So let's open up Desmos here. Okay, so I'm going to put in the equation x times y, which is equal to 12. Now if you notice here, okay, what's happening is that this graph is going in this direction, and then it's going to go all the way down. It's never going to cross the y-axis, which means that it's undefined at 0. Okay, same thing over here. So it's undefined at 0, and that's why we're not including 0. So therefore, that just verifies our domain and our range.